In this episode of Man versus Marriage, it's a little bit of an unconventional thing to talk about, but we're going to talk about it. And I think you are going to love it. We'll be right back. That's right, everybody. Now is the time to change your life. Welcome back to another episode of Man versus Marriage. It is I, your humble servant, the Q Dog, in the Moran family studio with my lovely wife. And is that an endearing look, or what is that?
I'm just waiting for you to finish what you're going to say. I know what's coming.
You were looking at me with longing in your eyes or something. Hey, get this. If you're consistently listening to, just the audio, thank you. But we do have some fun over here on this on this video edition of Man versus Marriage. So be sure to check it out sometime. But today, here we are. We're going to talk about something. This is unconventional. Hope it doesn't fall flat. It is something that I've had on my heart to talk about, and it's really the essence of this particular show. But before we do that, I want to make sure that if you're new to the program, check out our email address. It is Quincy at MVSMpodcast.com. Quincy at MVSMpodcast.com. And that's MVSM like Man versus Marriage. So make sure that you check that out. Also, in case you didn't know, if you do know, you'll be excited. If you didn't know, now you do know. QuincyMoran.com. That's where you can go check out my bio, a little bit more about me. And you can go check and see what we are doing on all aspects of adventures that are going out to make a positive impact on culture and to positively impact your life. Now, if you go to QuincyMoran.com/apparel, this will come up. And then you can go look at the clothing that we offer. I'm not making a ton of money off this clothing, but what I am doing is putting it out there. So if this show has had a positive impact on your life in any shape, form, or fashion, you can get some of our clothing and then go and wear that in public. Wear it at the gym, wear it at the church. Don't wear it at a bank robbery. Well, let me think about that. If there's cameras and they show your shirt all over, you're guilty. I'm not. But that might get us some publicity. Anyway, wherever you go, and that's QuincyMoran.com/apparel. And there's all kinds of things there that you can check out. We have all the lines, all the things, all the stuff. There's even a Quincy Moran line, not just Man versus Marriage or Family Famous. But with that being said, let's talk today about something called kintsugi. You ever heard of that phrase, honey? I know I talked to you a little bit about it.
I have from you.
You have. You have indeed. And it's something I heard about this probably about 10 years ago. And it's a practice in Japan from about the 15th century. So I'm going to throw this over for you guys to see. For those of you watching the program, you'll see this. And for those of you listening, I'll read it. It's kintsugi. It is Japanese for golden joinery. It's also known as kintsukori or golden repair. And it's the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery by mending the areas of breakage with urushi lacquer dusted or mixed with powder gold, silver, or platinum. The method is similar to makai or maki, the maki technique. As a philosophy, it treats breakage and repair as a part of the history of an object rather than something to disguise. So it's like your broken past, your pain, the things in your life that have gone on, those can be worn as a badge of beauty rather than something you hide and you keep hidden. Now, also for those of you, if you guys are not, if you're listening only, I'm just going to put a couple of samples of kintsugi artwork up. I think it's quite beautiful. I mean, this is a beautiful bowl anyway. Jeannie can't see it right now because the monitor is over on my side. But for those of you watching, you see the pattern in the bowl. Like this bowl obviously was broken, and it's been repaired. This one equally beautiful. Almost looks like it should have been that way. But and what that's meant to talk about in its fullness, and why I relate it to what we do, and why I want to encourage you, is the broken things in your life or your past doesn't really have to define you, and it's not necessarily something that you need to hide behind. Jeannie and I, at year 10, we were broken. We weren't necessarily breaking each other, but life was having its way with us,
kicking the crap out of us.
and it's not something we look at and go, oh, woe is me, but it's just the reality of what was happening. And what was happening in our life at the time is we had 6 kids. No, we had 7 kids.
Eighth one was on the way.
The 8th one was on the way, and in this 3 to 4 year span, we were living on the road. We didn't have a house anymore because we sold our house, and our new house was supposed to be ready, but in fact, it was delayed by months. So we went to live with some friends about 45 minutes from town, and then the company we were buying the house from ultimately ended up renting us a house when they
That
passed.
was baby 5.
Okay, well, I said in that 3 to 4 year span.
Because I was pregnant with Ash when we lived out there.
Okay.
That's baby 5.
Okay. So you go from there to. Can I get back to the story?
Yeah.
Or do you want some
No,
time?
I wasn't pregnant with her. She was born. She was living in the playpen. I remember. Sorry.
Yeah, you want to take some time to figure the math out?
No, I'm just your timeline. When you said year 10, I was thinking of year 10, but year 10 was Mo. So when you go back to that house being built, that wasn't Mo, because I wasn't pregnant with the twins until we were living in the rental. My brain just jumped. I'm sorry. It was trying to math the math. It wasn't adding up for me. Go ahead.
Well, that's why I said at year 10, here's where we were. And if you look at this 3 to 4 year span, these are the things that had happened
Gotcha. Okay.
to bring us to that place.
Sorry, you started talking about houses, and my brain was like, wait, no, that's not that kid. That's that kid. Sorry.
So we were a family invading another family space. And a matter of fact, the people we lived with at that time, we were pretty close to, but I was out coaching football and working a lot, and the dad of the small family that we were living with, I think he had a lot of heartburn towards me because I was out trying to make my way, and I was not as home as much as I could have been. Matter of fact, he told me that his heart had grown cold towards me, and he wanted to repent to me for that. And that was very painful to hear, but I appreciate him at the same time for being upfront and honest about it. He was frustrated with me, understandably so, looking back. But we had that going on, and then we ended up moving into that new house eventually. And it was while we were moving in that we found out that our children had been sexually assaulted by some babysitters. And over the course of the next year to 2 years, there were like pretty serious medical emergencies, diagnosis with autism, and then we hit some very challenging financial times where we were just getting ready to lose our house. We were eating out of a food bank at church, and autism was on a sleepless streak. And all that to say, we're not asking you to feel sorry for ourselves or for us. We're telling you that we were simply broken. What were you going through at that time, honey?
For the most part, I was just kind of isolated from everybody. I was always around children. I rarely had adult conversation. Once the molestation thing came to light, the one person that I used to spend a lot of time with and have adult conversation with was gone because obviously we're not going to keep those people around.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we tried getting back into church. That was a struggle. Um, I don't know. I was depressed. I was angry. I was frustrated. I felt like I was by myself. I felt like we were just kind of going through the motions at the time.
Yeah, I would say if there is a such thing, which I believe there is, survival mode, we were just getting through the day, and I was justifying what I was doing because, I was it, it would in my mind I would rationalize that if I was going to be doing it's okay for me to be out this late because I was going to be working anyway, and as you grow up you do what you see. And so all those things, and truthfully too, I was allowing I was allowing people to have me in places that I shouldn't have been, not in a bad way, so to speak, but I was helping other people manage their family
Mhm.
while my family was waiting at home for me. So it was a lot of difficulty on Jeannie's side. I was out chasing the next thing, working my tail off, and doing extracurricular things because I was desperate to provide for this growing family that we had. When in reality, what Jeannie would say, I took as go make more money. We don't have enough. And what she's really, what she was really saying at the time, and she can confirm this or clean it up, is that, you know, I'm freaking out because we don't have enough. We don't have enough money, but we also don't have enough time with you. And so we need you. I need you home.
Hmm.
The kids need you home. And we need more. We need more of you. But for me, that's hard to rationalize, as a young 20 something year old, man, maybe
I
almost
think
30.
I think though because of and whenever we talk about this, it's kind of where my mind goes is when you were living with your dad, you guys grew up poor. So when we got stuck in a rut and things were slowing down or the finances weren't there, I think you were just trying to make sure we didn't live that way. With one or two kids, it's hard. But with 5 to 7 kids, it's really hard, especially when you have like 5 in diapers at the same time. That took a toll.
Well, we didn't.
But we also had I think you had an expectation for yourself that no one else really realized but you. Because I think you had an expectation that you needed to find something that was going to hit it quick, make some money, and that was going to be our live stream for, you know, the foreseeable future. But the people that you were helping, huh, the people you were helping that were supposed to be part of those things, somehow those things just kept falling apart.
Yeah. Well, it's matter of fact. I mean, we didn't practice this, but it's a part of this particular journey. And I had to, this is not me like tooting my own horn or saying that I'm going to be famous or anything of that nature, but people around me were telling me, "Hey, I see
Mhm.
big things for you. This is what I see, for you and for your life." And I was trying hard to navigate work, the day to day, and then what I thought was ministry. It actually was ministry, but just maybe not the right time. Um, and fulfill the expectations of these people that are telling me they see these big things for me, feeling like I have something bigger to do and not knowing, what it was. Um, and so, I mean, it was just, but I think when you're young, you know, I, I think that's the time when you're making mistakes and you just don't know.
Well, and you follow the advice that you're given, when you don't have an example of what to do. You know, our examples from our parents weren't bad, they were just different. And I think we were both trying not to do what they did. At the same time, we were trying to figure out our own path, and we were letting other people influence what we were doing. I mean, I was not liked by a lot of people because I didn't agree with a lot of the stuff you were doing. You would come home and say, "Hey, I'm going to go do this for so and so," and I would get mad.
Mm-hmm.
And I am now public enemy number one to so and so because whenever they would talk about, "Oh, well, Quincy's going to help me," I was like, "What?" People would come over to the house and we'd be watching football or something, and they'd say, "Yeah, Quincy's going to help me do this," and before they could finish their sentence, I'd turn around and go, "I'm sorry, when is that supposed to happen? And when does he have the free time for that? Because no, we don't." And people would get pissed because I was pretty rude about it, but I was bitter. I was really angry because you can go and spend this many hours doing this, but when are you going to spend this many hours here? Like, when are you going to be with them? And at the same time, there was some selfishness to it because I needed a break.
Mm-hmm.
I needed to relax, and we had so many big changes in such a short span of time.
Yeah.
I mean, the first 5 babies were, I mean, they're 15 months to 18 months apart, but they were 5 kids in that time span because we had Hunter and then the triplets, which that shifted everybody's gears
Yeah.
because now we have a minimum of 18 months that I can think of where we didn't sleep. And for me, they were through the whole pregnancy, we were up and down because I was in and out of labor. Excuse me. We had a hospital stay for 6 weeks. We had the babies born, and then we had the next 4.5 months going in and out of hospitals for those 3, plus raising the 18-month-old who had just learned to walk right before I went to the hospital. All these, and he's got his own set of issues because he's hard of hearing,
Mm-hmm.
and he had a little bit of medical struggle in the very, very beginning. And so we were trying to navigate 4 kids, your job, just your regular daytime job,
Mm-hmm.
and people that would just like, "Well, hey, Quincy, can you come do this?" Y'all, we have 4 babies. Why are you asking him to come do things? That used to piss me off.
Yeah.
I mean, even and then we had the triplets were 7 months when we found out we were pregnant with Ashlyn. And she gets mad because people call her the oops baby. She was never an oops baby. She was a whoa, we didn't plan that, but we're happy for it because we never said no whenever we got pregnant. It was like, this is what we want.
Mm-hmm.
We just didn't know that it was going to happen so quickly. And the concern wasn't having another baby. The concern was my ability to carry said child because I had just had triplets.
Mm-hmm.
And that was hard, really hard on my body. But at the time, it just seemed like everybody had their input. Everybody had their ideas, but nobody had ever been in our shoes.
Mm-hmm.
So we really didn't have a solid, what do we do? We had other couples that we were friends with, and the men in the house, they, one couple, she lives one life, he lives one life, and they come together and they're fine. That's how they wanted to live it. Okay, cool. That doesn't work for me. I don't work well apart from Quincy. And it's not that I can't, it's that I don't want to. And we
Mm-hmm.
had another family where she did everything. He worked a job and he could go do football, he could go do baseball, he could go whatever he wanted to do as long as she maintained everything else. That doesn't work for us. Definitely not for me. So we had examples around us that were not cohesive to what it was that we wanted, but we didn't know how to get what we wanted because I wanted you home more. I wanted more family time, but I also wanted stability and the bills paid,
Yeah.
and I couldn't have both. And you wanted to help people, and provide for the family and have time for the family, but it just seemed like we could not find a balance.
Yeah, the idea too was that one of these side ventures was going to take off and it was going to allow me to be home more, but I really didn't know what it took to make that happen.
Yeah.
And the longer things went on, the more broken we got as individuals.
Mhm.
And then the more broken our relationship got. And so we could have stopped there. We could have divorced. We could have just swept that under the rug and kept going along and remained broken individuals and a relationship that was broken. But if you fast forward, 15 years, our places of brokenness that you and I, and, we're not just you and I, but Coach Rita, these programs that we listen to,
Mhm.
the grace of God, all these things have truly been that lacquer, that gold dust, the platinum, the silver that filled in the brokenness in our pottery, if
Mhm.
you will. And I look at it just like I look at, for those of you that were watching, and if you haven't, go look it up on the internet. There's some beautiful stuff out there that you can tell it's been broken, but where it's been mended adds to the beauty of the pottery.
Mhm.
It may not look like everything else. It may not look like what it was supposed to originally, but it's a different kind of beauty that adds to me to the mystique and also to the value of this piece of pottery. And I look at that and I just compare that to our relationship
Mhm.
and I go, wow, this is a mirror image. We're broken in many places.
Mhm.
And, through God's grace, we started to layer, and it didn't happen immediately. And this is the
No, this took a
process.
lot. In all fairness, this took probably, I mean, we had some moments. Rita had some great tools and we had some moments that were aha moments. But I think for us to actually be solid again took us about 2.5 years of just consistently working
Hmm.
on the things that we were struggling with and trying to mend everything that we weren't talking about for 10 years. There were hurts that went back to the very beginning of our marriage, like the very first week.
Yeah.
That's how far back some of these things went. And we had to not only go through the process of airing the grievances and the process of forgiving, but we had to move past it. The airing of the grievances and the forgiveness are all well and good, but once you forgive, the next step is to move forward.
Well, there's forgiveness. The thing is, though, is the ultimate piece, and what I believe is the gold in this story is the reconciliation.
Mm.
Because you can look back, you can forgive somebody but not reconcile. And when you look at this particular thing,
I have a lot of those people. I forgive you, but I don't like you and you need to stay over
yeah, and
there.
it can you can experience the pain over and over again, as a matter of just recalling this thing that you've actively
Yeah.
forgiven. But when you reconcile, you can look at what it was and you see this is something that you've overcome. So now you look at it and it's more of a strength to you to say, we made it through this. So you experience forgiveness, you reconcile, you put those things back together. And it doesn't mean that, you know, there's not, what do they call it? An embellishment there.
Mhm.
There's not, you don't see where the brokenness was. What you see is what mended the brokenness together. And so I had a philosophy before I really thought about this. I've been working on things because as you counsel people or you coach yourself, you're like, man, many people, if not all in some fashion, are wounded, whether it's their past, something that's in the present, something they carry around with them daily. There may be, I'm confident there are things that people don't even know they've wounded you, but you are carrying around these wounds. And without the proper medical attention to these wounds, they get infected. Now, once you get them cared for, a wound doesn't just get healed overnight. There's a process to it. And arguably, the wound gets uglier before it gets better because it has to scab over. And then it stays in that scabbed, broken, dried out spot until eventually you have a scar. And so when I'm talking to people that I'm close to and I'm coaching them through, even to myself, I say, look, you're wounded right now. It's just something that's fresh. And a wound doesn't even have to be fresh. You could be nursing a wound, but it's not healing. So you have to take your wound to a scab, and from a scab to a scar. And when you go through that process, which means this wound that's hurt you deeply, as you get through the healing process, it's likely to get a little bit worse because you have to reconcile things. And so once the reconciliation is done and now you have a scar, you look back at the scar and you have an opportunity there to look at it as like a place in your life where you have overcome something. You can look and remember the negativity that's associated with the scar. And oftentimes we do, but you can also look at the scar in a more positive manner and say, I overcame that.
Well, it's not only that. It's not just about overcoming it. It's being able to get to the point where, like now, when we talk about these things, the emotions still come back because it's a memory. It has that emotion is still tied to it. It's not that there's an unforgiveness there. It's that the hurt. And I remember the hurt. So like whenever we talk about when I thought you were going to leave me, even now when that comes up in conversation, it's a memory. I don't feel that way like I used to. On occasion it will come up, but it's not the same. But whenever that conversation comes around, I still get emotional about it because that hurt. That was one of those places that I never thought we would get to, and we got to it. But now, had we not had that come to Jesus moment, we wouldn't have gone to Rita. We wouldn't have gotten the help that we needed. We would have just either trucked through it and we would still be surviving. 2 people sharing a house and nothing more. Or we would have gone our separate ways.
Mm-hmm.
Either one of those things would have impacted every aspect of our life. Our kids, how they were raised, how they grew up and how they developed, all of that would have changed.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just looking back on it and saying, I overcame. It's looking back on it and saying, wow, look what that moment did for me.
Well, that's what overcoming something is.
Yes and no.
So how is explain to me the no?
Because I don't always look at something as overcoming. There are things that I have failed at, and I still go back and look at them and think, wow, look what that failure did for me. It's not an overcoming moment for me because it's not a triumphant moment. I failed at something. But going back and looking at, like Ed says, it's not life happening to me, it's life happening for me. Without those things, good, bad, or indifferent, I wouldn't be where I am. Now, the overcoming part is, for me, what are you laughing at me for?
I'm laughing at you because you're coming from a place where you've come through those circumstances. Now you're in a place where that's been reconciled and you're looking back at what happened. And that is the definition of overcoming something.
Okay, then you can look at it as overcoming. For me, I look at it as the growth in the emotion rather than the growth in like I don't know, in the memory.
Well, don't look at, I don't want you to just, necessarily look at, identify the word overcoming with like what they talk about in church, like triumph and celebrate. Yes. We blow the shofar, that's not the defining line of overcoming something. That means you successfully made it through a very difficult circumstance.
Okay, if you put it that way, then yeah.
Well, that's the way I intended it to say. That's why when you're going back and you're saying, well, it's not necessarily overcoming, it's all these things, which is,
well, because some of those things I look at, and I don't look at it as we overcame them. I look at for me, for some things, it wasn't an overcoming moment; it was a failure moment. The failure moment sucks.
Yeah,
but it still produced something good.
Yeah, in the end.
Yeah.
In the end, you've overcome that. That's the product. That's the outcome.
Okay, it's a verbiage thing. It's fine.
Am I?
No, you're not getting it. You were not getting it wrong at all. But this is one of those moments where you think one way and I think another way, and it's just the verbiage thing. I know he's going to go look up
He's going to go look it up.
I understand the definition of the word overcome. I understand what you were saying. I am not disagreeing with you.
Yeah, I'm just looking.
I have a different view in my head of what it means.
Succeeding in dealing with a problem or a difficulty. That's where.
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm telling you, it's a verbiage thing. That's all it is. It's just a verbiage thing.
Well, that's
kind of like speed bump. It is a verbiage thing.
No, that's what I'm trying to do is understand. If just because there was a failure involved doesn't mean you haven't overcome something.
Agreed.
Most of the time, in order to overcome something, you have to fail, because then you have to overcome that. So it's not like you get to the point or you are faced with something that's difficult and you endure and win. Sure, that's overcoming something. But the true essence of overcoming something is failing and getting up and going forward anyway. Now you have overcome that obstacle, something that got in your way. So maybe you're thinking about it in the, in the church sense. I don't know. That's why I'm asking. I'm going to say, am I thinking of overcoming or the word overcome wrong? I look at.
No, it's the way the definition is in my head. That's all. It's like I said, you're not wrong. I view it differently, but that's like you said, it's probably because of the church upbringing and how it is correlated there.
Yeah.
With, those are your major victories. When you overcome, it's a major victory and it's all this big celebratory crap, and not crap, but for me, it's, I don't know. I focus on the failures and stuff, and I don't really look at that as one of those big triumphant moments. I look at it later as thank God that happened, because I would have been screwed if it hadn't.
Would you say it's pretty triumphant that we didn't get a divorce and our relationship is where it is now?
I would say it's miraculous that we didn't get a divorce. We were that was hard. It was really hard.
Sure it was. It was.
I'm not denying that overcome is the right word, Quincy. Move on. Move on. It's a verbiage thing. I'm trying to tell you, it is a verbiage thing. It is not you. It is not your definition. It is a verbiage thing. My brain is not going there. Just move on.
Well, yeah, maybe you're misunderstanding what I'm talking about here, or I'm trying to understand what you mean, and you're telling me to move on. So
I'm explaining to you what I mean, but you're telling me that it is still the same thing. I get that. I understand it. It has not fully clicked yet. So you're going to have to give me some time to process through it, because I've got it, for whatever reason, I am stuck on the verbiage. I don't know why.
Okay.
I just am. So that's why I'm telling you, move on, because if we keep repeating this, I'm not going to process through it. It's just going to be a back and forth conversation, as opposed to getting to the point of repairing everything and looking at the beautiful gold that you've created in this piece that you busted into a bunch of shitty pieces.
I don't know. I'm just trying to understand what you're talking about, and I don't feel hung up. I'm just asking more questions on how do you see this. So what do you look at these things that you are triumphant in when you look back? What do you call that then?
That's the reconciliation part for me. More so than an overcoming, it's the reconciliation part because the old me, I guess it's also a transformation for me because the old me and the old situations, without them, I would not be who I am now. I would not have registered the things that needed to change and that needed to be different. I don't really look at it. I guess overcome for me is more like a competition thing. And I don't look at our life as a competition thing.
Okay, well, I don't see overcome that way at all, unless I'm talking about it in a sports um, aspect.
So here
But
you go, guys. This is one of those moments where she doesn't think like you. It's not intentional. It's not a bad thing. It's just there are certain terms that I get hung up on for whatever reason. I don't know why.
yeah, you and me both. I don't know why either. Anyway, now that this conversation needs some kintsugi in it, um, I'm going to go back to where the point that I'm making. And if you and I don't have to kick the ball back and forth about the words, you listener, if you have an issue with overcome, replace it with something that is victorious and a little more harmless to you, whatever is necessary. But the overarching point that I'm making is your scars don't have to be a place of pain. They don't have to put you in the state of victimhood. It is something that you can look at and say, look at what I was able to come through. Look at the challenges that I've faced in my life. Look at this painful situation um, that has ultimately turned into a positive. And I know there are things you can say about scars. Maybe they're not as strong as the original skin, or whatever aspect you want to look at it there. But frankly, your scars are not something that's necessary to hide. Your scars can be an inspiration to other people and what it is that they've been through.
It doesn't have to be ugly either. I mean, look at how many people take scars and tattoo over them and make something beautiful out of something that was painful. It's not meant to hide them, it's meant to enhance them because now you're looking at them and it's something pretty rather than something that brings pain. Kind of like the gold. It didn't have to be gold. I mean, most people this day and age use super glue. You break the gravy boat, you super glue it back together. You can't use super glue on a relationship. You've got to have something sturdy or something that's going to actually, because super glue can still fall apart.
Maybe.
Oh, I can prove it. I've broken the same gravy boat a few times. Ask my grandmother.
Mhm.
But it's the gold is less fragile. The platinum is less fragile.
Well, I don't know what goes into like whatever it is. They use some kind of lacquer and the dust from the gold or the silver or the platinum. But whatever it is, it has taken these pieces that were once broken, like something that was whole, it's broken apart, it's separated, it brings it back together and really shows you the roadmap of something, gives you there's a journey within this repair that you can look at and you could admire it, as opposed to looking at it as if it were a negative thing. And for what we've done is we've done that with our relationship. We've taken all those broken parts. We actually put them out on the podcast over these last 330 or so episodes, and kind of shown you what our roadmap is, in order that maybe you have the courage to get on that path. Maybe you're even on that path and you just need a little bit more time, because like Jeannie was saying, it's you don't really just pour this stuff in. There's a process that goes along um, with this kintsugi that it's an art form, but it's also something that takes time. It's
And
got a cure.
patience.
And really, if you haven't looked at it, if you're on the audio only, go back and look at the images and see what kind of beauty there is. I mean, they've done some of this with not just like pottery, but with statues, with things of extreme value, and they've put it back together. And so you have the opportunity to tell your own story. Look at the things that you may have potentially overcome. And those are victories in your life. And so I encourage you to share those. Now, nobody wants you to be the one out there belly aching all the time and demanding that people praise you for all the tough things that you've been through. And that's not the approach we take on this podcast either. We give it as a testimony to show you what is possible. And so I think it is important to take inventory. I know it's important to take inventory at times and just look back at the things that you have been through and where you are in your life. Give yourself some credit and allow that encouragement to build and for you to move forward. And maybe as you look at those areas in your life, you think about this kintsugi and you go out and promote this to other people, because it's not something we could hide this. We could keep this to ourselves. What we've been able to do with our relationship, but we actually want to put it out there to encourage you so that you can see what is possible. And there it is. I think that's all I had. Let me refer to my notes. Yep, I covered it all.
Good job.
I guess the only other thing is, how can we help you? How can we help you start to put, and I didn't write this down, I'm just thinking of it now, dad jokes and all. How can we help you begin to put the pieces back together? That is, the other part of this episode that's so important, besides Jeannie and I arguing over the word overcome or stupendous or miraculous or whatever else we got hung up on.
What can we say? We at least bring entertainment.
Maybe that's entertaining. I don't know.
Makes Kiki laugh when we argue.
Well, she's not present. But hey, we'll play this for her on the big screen and we'll see how it goes. My question to you is, how can we help you get on that journey and start putting your pieces back together? Now, the truth is it's going to take more than just you when it comes to your relationship. But Jeannie and I like to start with personal responsibility and putting your pieces back together. So you bring the healthiest version of yourself, or maybe you're half of the bowl. I don't know. You bring that back to your spouse, and then you guys can start to put the broken pieces of your relationship back together, because that's why that's how you have found our podcast, is if there are challenges in your relationship, and maybe it's not terrible, but you know that it can be so much more. And that's how we're here to help you. So with that, any final words?
Nope.
Okay. Make sure that you check out the email, Quincy at MVSMpodcast.com. There's so many banners in here. I never want to hit the wrong one. There is this one that my brother made. I don't know.
Yeah, don't play those.
Yeah, this one is
don't play those.
I can't really read it all, but
that's not
it's pretty funny. But yeah, Quincy at MVSMpodcast.com. Make sure also that you go to QuincyMoran.com. There's more than just apparel there, but for the sake of this particular screenshot, it's QuincyMoran.com/apparel, and you'll go see all of our gear. That's the Man versus Marriage, but we also have the BS podcast, which has got some pretty funny shirts. We have Family Famous, we have Quincy Moran, and nothing on the Ink Pastor yet. Nope. I don't even think I have a logo for that. There's time. Nothing needs to happen today, boys. Well, that is it for this particular episode of Man vs. Marriage. For Jeannie Moran, I am Quincy Moran. And again, this is Man vs. Marriage, the podcast.